My sister dumped her kids on me because of an emergency, but through social media I found out she just went to a wedding and her new boyfriend doesn't even know she has children. My sister, let's call her Miranda, has always been a source of stress for me. We've never gotten along. She's manipulative and tends to display narcissistic traits. The thing is, Miranda was born prematurely, and that caused our parents to be overly anxious and protective of her. Unfortunately, because of that, I often felt forgotten. Our parents would miss my school plays or basketball games and even forget to pick me up from events. One of the most painful recurring issues was birthday presents. Miranda always got cute, thoughtful gifts that made her happy. I would get books or stuffed bears I didn't even like. It was a constant reminder that my sister was the favorite. Dealing with my parents' unfairness wasn't easy, but my sister took things to another level, enjoying their favoritism and using it against me. For example, one time she ripped my dress while I was sleeping just because the boy she liked had asked me out instead of her. I was devastated and couldn't stop crying because I loved that dress. When I told our parents, they scolded her, but Miranda immediately played the victim, crying and claiming that she liked him first and that I was doing this on purpose because I hated her. To my horror, my parents comforted her after her dramatic story and told me to avoid boys she liked so I wouldn't hurt her feelings. It was unbelievably unfair. It wasn't my fault he had chosen to ask me out. Another time, I had been begging our parents for a trip to Six Flags for my birthday, but Miranda found out and decided she wanted to go for her birthday too. Since hers was earlier than mine, our parents agreed to take her. She didn't even go on half the rides. I knew she chose that destination just to spite me. For my birthday, instead of going to Six Flags, they took me to the same restaurant we always went to. I was upset, but they told me there was no point. Going to Six Flags twice in 1 year. As we got older, Miranda treated me even worse. She constantly gave me backhanded compliments like, "Your face looks better with glasses," or "You like that guy." "Oh, I thought you were into girls." During my teen years, I tried to stay out of the spotlight. Unlike me, Miranda was everyone's darling. In public, she seemed kind and helpful, but in private, she was my worst nightmare. Sometimes she'd be nice, but only if she wanted something from me. Once she got it, she'd go back to ignoring or mocking me. Miranda made me feel insecure not only about my appearance, but also about the guys I dated. When I was 17, I had my first boyfriend, but Miranda planted doubts in my head. She told me he was too good looking for me and would leave me soon anyway, so I might as well break up with him first. Whenever he came over, Miranda would flirt with him standing too close, touching his arm, laughing loudly and unnaturally. Of course, this made him uncomfortable. After months of her potting doubts in my head, I broke up with him. Looking back now, I realized that was a mistake. He actually seemed like a genuinely good person. After high school, I moved to another state to study engineering in college. During holidays, I'd come home and the snide, cutting comments from Miranda were still there. The toxic atmosphere never went away. At T25, Miranda met her future husband Dave. 2 years later, they decided to get married. She announced her engagement, surprising everyone. We knew she had been dating other guys on the side. Still, we were happy. She seemed ready to settle down with a decent man. Miranda asked me to be her maid of honor. My parents were thrilled, but I felt the complete opposite. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and I was right. Miranda used the role to control and manipulate me. She regularly threatened to demote me or remove me as maid of honor if I did anything she didn't like. Whenever she asked my opinion, I answered honestly, but every time she'd get angry, blame me, and throw tantrums. Because of her aggressive reactions, I eventually stopped saying anything to avoid provoking another fight. I preferred to keep the peace rather than endure her verbal attacks. Once, over lunch, I simply asked if the maid of honor would have a special dress just to understand her vision better. She immediately accused me of wanting to be the center of attention. Later, the conversation shifted to guest accommodations. My mum suggested booking an Airbnb early, and I agreed. Miranda exploded, saying she'd already discussed it with her fiancé and they'd be booking hotel rooms. She kept yelling at me, saying I was stupid and that as her maid of honor I worked for her and should consult her before agreeing with anyone else's ideas. I stayed quiet to avoid making things worse, but she went on to accuse me of having a bad attitude. Mum tried to step in, but Miranda interrupted her, saying she was tired of dealing with such an immature maid of honor and that I needed to grow up. When we finally left, she kept yelling at me for another 10 minutes in the parking lot, repeating the same accusations. I just wanted to run away, but my car was a 20-minute walk away, so she had to give me a ride. The wedding day finally came. The ceremony itself went relatively smoothly, but even then, Miranda kept finding petty reasons to pick fights with me. At the reception, she openly yelled at me in front of everyone, creating a tense atmosphere. I caught her glaring at me between events. She complained about the music, the way drinks were served, and anything else she could criticize. When it was my turn to give a speech, I stood up hoping to say something warm and heartfelt. But Miranda made a hand gesture telling me to wrap it up quickly. Later, she accused me of mentioning her childhood in my speech and claimed I was deliberately trying to make her look bad in front of her new family. I was crushed because everyone else seemed to like my speech. Even our parents had no complaints. The next morning, when the chaos had settled, I realized just how much anxiety I had been living with for the past several months, and the cause was Miranda. I finally understood that she had been my main problem my entire life. I regret not having the courage to refuse to participate in the wedding, but I knew my family would have blamed me. When that nightmare was finally over, I could fully focus on my career. A few months later, I met my current boyfriend, Tom. We started dating, and a year later, we decided to move in together. My parents were happy for us. My sister, however, voiced her disapproval, saying Tom seemed too boring and was just some typical computer nerd. In reality, Tom worked in IT and made 3 times more than I did. Miranda didn't know that, and honestly, I didn't care. I was happy with him, and my sister's opinion didn't matter to me. One day, my life suddenly changed when my sister announced at a family dinner that she was pregnant. If you're wondering how this affected me, well, immediately after, she said she couldn't wait to see me become an aunt because she was really going to need my help during this difficult time. Her words shocked me. She was an adult, about to have a baby, yet instead of asking her husband or our parents for help, she somehow decided I would be the one taking care of her child. You have to understand, I'd never had kids in my life and had zero experience with them. I always felt uncomfortable around children and had no desire to interact with them. I was perfectly fine not having kids yet, so what she said genuinely frightened me. In that moment, I felt cornered. I knew my sister would find a way to make me babysit, especially since I worked remotely and it would be convenient for her to drop off the baby at my place anytime. My sister had no boundaries whenever I tried to set any. Our parents would immediately rush to her defense. When her first child was born, I occasionally watched him. At first, it wasn't too bad. Her husband worked night shifts, she worked during the day, and I just needed to let him sleep a bit. I was never left completely alone with the baby, and I only started babysitting when he was already 6 months old, which was a bit easier. Unfortunately, over time, it became more frequent. I was asked to watch the baby more and more often, and my sister constantly criticized my childcare methods. I could be peacefully working when suddenly I'd get a call from her or my mum asking about my weekend plans. If I said I had none, I'd simply be told I was going to my sister's to give her a break, and that was the end of the discussion. Over time, it started to feel like I had a second job, one I wasn't being paid for. You'd think she'd at least be grateful for my help, but no. Every time I came home, she'd call our mum and complain I had done something wrong, changed the diaper incorrectly, fed the baby the wrong way, nitpicking over the smallest things. It drove me crazy because I was doing her a favor. Now, you can see just how manipulative she was. We clearly weren't close, and she should have been grateful I helped her at all. Instead, she smiled to my face while undermining our relationship behind my back. Eventually, I got truly angry. It started affecting my mental health, and Tom noticed. One evening, we had an honest conversation, and I vented everything. He convinced me to finally stand up to my family. The next time they called asking me to babysit, I flatly refused. Miranda and Mum called repeatedly, pleading for me to do it for the family, but I stood my ground and told them to go to hell. I felt I had already done more than I should, and I wanted nothing to do with my sister or her child anymore. I cut off all contact with Miranda. She showed up at my house when I wouldn't answer her calls, but I refused to open the door. My parents also tried to pressure me into forgiving her, but eventually they gave up, realizing I wouldn't budge. I occasionally spoke to my parents, but that was it. This went on for 2 years. During that time, Miranda had a second child with Dave. Last year, my mum called to tell me that Miranda and Dave were getting divorced. It was quite unexpected. Even though I didn't want anything to do with my sister, I was still surprised. When I asked my mum for details, it turned out Miranda had been sleeping with her co-workers. Apparently, Dave had found intimate messages on her second phone, the one she always hid from him. He gathered evidence and filed for divorce. For Miranda, it was a total shock because Dave handed her the divorce papers immediately. When she tried to explain herself, he told her he knew everything. She begged him to forgive her, but he walked away. I was stunned by this turn of events. Although looking back now, I realized Dave was far too good for her. In a way, I'm glad he escaped that nightmare. After the divorce, Miranda had to move back in with our parents. I heard from them that she'd be out all night, coming home in the morning drunk and reeking of alcohol. Eventually, she was fired from her job because she was constantly late. That only made her drink even more while she was out having fun. My parents were forced to take care of her kids. This went on for months. Unlike her life, mine was going wonderfully. Tom and I got a dog, bought a house, and gradually moved in. We were talking about marriage, but were in no rush. We were certain we'd always be together, so we were just enjoying the moment. When we threw a housewarming party, I felt obligated to invite my parents. Unfortunately, without telling me. They also brought my sister and her kids. The moment I saw her, I was furious, but I didn't want to make a scene in front of the guests, so I kept quiet. Tom greeted them politely and offered drinks while I glared at my parents. My dad came over, looking a bit embarrassed, and told me he hadn't wanted to bring Miranda, but Mum thought it would be the perfect chance for us to reconcile. Miranda loudly told the kids to go hug me because I was their aunt. I forced a smile as they hugged me. Then Miranda began lecturing me that I needed to be a more involved aunt because the kids barely knew me and I should make more of an effort. I clenched my teeth to keep from saying something that would embarrass her in front of everyone. During the party, I noticed Miranda was constantly drinking wine and paying absolutely no attention to her kids. They behaved terribly, chasing our dog, trying to kick her or pull her tail, attempting to sneak into our bedroom, which I had specifically locked so guests wouldn't enter, and even managing to break a vase while playing. I was on the verge of exploding and kept looking at Miranda, waiting for her to say something to the kids, but she didn't care at all. She just laughed, drank, and acted as if nothing was wrong. When some guests wanted to see the house, Miranda joined the tour. I showed everyone the rooms, and when we went out into the yard, Miranda loudly commented that the house was too big for just the two of us. Then she asked loudly enough for everyone to hear whether I planned to have kids. That immediately drew the attention of the guests, who all looked at me curiously. I sharply told her that it was none of her business. She replied that my life decisions were a matter for the whole family, especially since I was an aunt. My irritation was growing, but I kept myself in check in front of the guests. The more she drank, the more provocative her behavior became. Miranda started making inappropriate remarks about my relationship with Tom, saying we were wasting time by not getting married and not having kids. I felt the tension in the room but chose to ignore her comments. Later that evening, after most guests had left, I decided it was time to address the situation. I pulled Miranda aside and told her exactly what I thought of her behavior, especially given our complicated history. As expected, she took it badly, accusing me of arrogance and ingratitude, reminding me of all the time I supposedly owed her for letting me babysit her kids in the past. Our parents tried to calm things down. Mum again urged me to forgive Miranda, but I stood firm and told them all to leave. After that incident, I decided I never wanted to see my sister again or my mother, who constantly defended her. I thought that if I cut off contact, things would improve, but yesterday morning, there was an unexpected knock at the door. When I opened it, Miranda was standing there, looking desperate. She hurriedly explained that she had a serious problem at work and no one else to watch her kids. She begged me to keep them for just a few hours. I looked at the kids, they looked tired and worn out, and it hurt me to think she had dragged them out so early just to bring them to me. I asked why she hadn't gone to our parents, and she said they were at our aunt's house, which I later confirmed. When I suggested she call her ex-husband, she said he was asleep because he had worked a night shift. So, according to her, I was her last hope. Reluctantly, I agreed, and she left looking satisfied. After closing the door, I felt both annoyed and sorry for the kids. The sheer audacity of Miranda dropping them off without warning, with no regard for my own plans, was astonishing. Despite my resentment, I decided to make the kids comfortable. We played, watched cartoons, and I even got them interested in drawing. and other simple activities. Surprisingly, they calmed down quickly once we got to know each other better, and I even started enjoying their company. By lunchtime, I realized I had no idea whether they had any food allergies. Not wanting to risk it, I tried calling Miranda, no answer. I called again, voicemail. I decided to ask the kids directly. Gently, I explained that their mum seemed busy at work and wasn't answering her phone, and I carefully asked if they had any allergies or foods they disliked. The older girl, while talking about food preferences, suddenly mentioned that maybe mum wasn't answering because she was at a wedding. I frowned and asked how she knew that. She hesitated, then admitted she had overheard Miranda talking about it with a friend on the way to my house. The puzzle clicked into place, and I felt a wave of anger. I thanked the kids for their honesty and reassured them that everything was fine. Then I called my parents to get to the bottom of it. After a long argument, Mum finally admitted Miranda had indeed gone to a wedding where children weren't allowed. She went with her new boyfriend, who apparently had no idea she was a mother of two. Mum tried to justify it by saying men don't like women with kids, so Miranda decided to hide the fact. But I was furious she had lied to me yet again and manipulated me into babysitting. I checked Miranda's Instagram to confirm. Sure enough, there were fresh stories from the wedding. She was smiling and drinking. I shook my head in disappointment. Browsing her page, I realized there wasn't a single photo of her children. My sister, a mother of two, was actively pretending to be single and child-free, erasing her own kids from her public life. Later, when Miranda came to pick up the kids, we had a massive argument. I made it clear I would not be part of her deception and warned her, if you ever dump your kids on me like this again, I'll call social services. Miranda exploded at this and started insulting me, but then Tom, who had come home from work, stepped in. He threatened to call the police, and she left immediately. After everything, I feel drained and emotionally exhausted. I'm grateful Tom is always on my side, but Mum and our aunt have already called, urging me to show more understanding toward the struggles of a single mother and insisting I need to learn to help the family in difficult times. First update, many thanks to everyone for your understanding and support. I've received numerous messages from strangers asking if I was okay and sharing their own stories about toxic relatives similar to my sister. After reading the comments, I realized that my mother also behaves in a very toxic way, continuing to let my sister walk all over me. It's obvious she still favors Miranda, even though Miranda is the real problem. I'm planning to have a serious talk with my mum. I called my aunt to hear her version of events and found out that my mum hadn't told her the whole truth. So I did it for her. When my aunt learned that Miranda had lied to me, forced me to babysit her kids, and hid from her boyfriend that she was a mother of two, she apologized and promised to speak with my mum. I don't know exactly what conversation they had, but soon after, my mum sent me a message scolding me for dragging my aunt into our personal matters and for making my sister look bad. I'm so tired of my mum making ridiculous excuses for Miranda's behavior while never calling her out on anything. Second update, 2 weeks have passed since my last update. Despite my efforts to distance myself from Miranda, the tension in the family only grew. My mum kept pressuring me to forgive Miranda and be part of her life again, meaning to babysit her kids. She even started emotionally blackmailing me, saying that she and my dad are getting older and soon Miranda would be the only family I have left. I decided to have an honest conversation with my mum and asked to meet her alone, warning her in advance not to bring up Miranda. She agreed. We met in a quiet CAF and I hoped for a calm, honest talk. After sitting down, I took a deep breath, preparing myself. I started by saying I love her and Dad very much and want to maintain a healthy relationship with them. I told her I understood her worries about aging and the importance of family unity, but stressed that my emotional well-being is just as important if we are to have a good relationship. I explained the enormous emotional damage Miranda's manipulation has caused me over the years and why I need to prioritize my mental health. My mum, clearly conflicted, listened as I gave examples of Miranda's toxic behavior since childhood and described how it affected my life. I shared how often I had been ignored, used, and manipulated. I hoped she would understand how serious this was. Her face showed a mix of emotions: guilt, realization, and sadness. Then, to my surprise, she admitted that she had always been aware of Miranda's manipulative nature but chose to turn a blind eye to preserve at least the appearance of family harmony. She explained that Miranda had been born prematurely with some health issues, which terrified her. As a result, she overprotected Miranda and was simply grateful that her child was alive and well, making her blind to Miranda's actions. Hearing this broke my heart. I reminded her that I am also her child and needed her too. It's not my fault I was born healthy. I said I understood her struggles back then, but urged her to have an honest talk with Miranda. Otherwise, her own children might one day treat her with the same resentment I feel now. I emphasized that family problems can only be resolved if everyone is willing to acknowledge them openly. My mum nodded, which shocked me because I didn't expect her to truly hear me. We talked about the importance of boundaries, and I explained I needed space, so I planned to avoid contact for a while. She begged me not to disappear for years, told me she loved me, and regretted what I'd been through. I reassured her I wasn't planning to vanish forever, I just needed time. After this talk, I felt much better. Later, my dad reached out to me privately. He also acknowledged Miranda's manipulative character and said he understood my decision. He admitted he regretted allowing her to behave that way for so many years and promised to respect my wish to protect my mental health. He told me he would always support me, which is perhaps the best thing a parent can say. I have completely cut off contact with Miranda and even installed cameras at my front door so that if she tries anything again, I'll have grounds to call the police. Third update. It's been 4 months since my last update. The reason for my absence is that I decided to take a break from social media and deleted all my apps. My mental health has greatly improved. I also started seeing a therapist regularly and focusing on personal growth. Tom and I are still going strong. Last month, during a romantic date on the beach, he unexpectedly proposed to me. It was incredibly sweet. He was nervous and slightly trembling when he got down on one knee and pulled out the ring. I still can't believe that in a few months I'll be marrying such a wonderful man. I told my parents the news. Even though we don't talk often, they were thrilled for me and adore Tom. Recently, I found out that Miranda moved out of our parents' house after they finally lost patience with her constant late-night partying and coming home drunk at dawn. She tried to argue, but had no choice but to leave. My parents agreed to pay her rent for 6 months. After that, she'll have to manage on her own. Dave still pays her child support each month, but I doubt it will cover all her expenses. I can only hope she will grow up and start acting responsibly for the sake of her children. That's all for now. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Personally, I don't think Miranda will change and will likely continue her bad behavior.